All right, welcome back to the shop here in Canterbury, New Hampshire. Tonight, we're going to talk about a lesser used wood joint. I'm not really sure why, because it's one of the fastest, easiest, and strongest wood joints there is, and it's a lot of fun to make. And tonight I'm going to show you how to do it on the table saw with some special tips and techniques. So what I'm talking about is the bridle joint. It's basically this joint here, where you have a tenon, and then it's as if you have a wide open mortise like this that comes in and joins, and it's sweet. I mean, it's a super way for a corner to come together. There's a lot of strength, great glue surface, but unlike its neighbor, actually the way more commonly talked about is the mortise and tenon. And the mortise and tenon we use usually when a rail is going into a leg. So you don't go all the way through the top, because that would weaken the leg. You would have a kind of a flappy, loose piece here. But the tenon is totally housed by the mortise. So it goes into the leg, it's glued in, nice and strong. Really common joint in traditional woodworking, and even common today. There are some awesome machines out there that'll cut this joint for you very rapidly, or you can do it on the table saw, as I've shown many times, or you can even do it by hand. It's quite time consuming as compared to machine methods. The bridle joint is one of those joints that I remember first really taking notice of in probably the early 80s. I think it was around the early 80s. Some of you might remember there was a furniture company came out, and it was called This End Up. And they made furniture that the primary means of joining their furniture together was these massive bridle joints like this. And it was really strong furniture, and it was all the rage for a while. Well, I shouldn't say all the rage, because well, some of us. I've got a piece right here that's very similar to one of them. It was done, I think, at the vocational school my father used to teach and was the administrator at, Neshoba Valley Regional Technical High School. I think that's how it went. But anyway, check this out. We've got this chair. I believe they made it there. It's all made of red oak. And look at this gigantic bridle joint right here in the front. And you've got pegs going through as well. And then check it out. There's a bridle joint in the back as well. This chair's like 40 years old. And I'm telling you, it is rock solid. There's absolutely no movement to it to this day. It's about 1 5/8 inch stock. I think This End Up, most of their material was, I think a lot of it was southern yellow pine, and it was dressed down to about 1.5 inches. But, I mean, the chair itself, it's pretty comfortable, but the arms are really awful. It's just, they're too narrow, they're hard, there's nothing warm and comfortable about them. I mean, they're the total antithesis of the seat I'm in. I get in, nice, squishy, comfy, and then you go, on these hard-edged arms. Now, so, yes, the bridle joint works here, but it's not glamorous, but it's functional. You know, they also made these bunk bed sets that were so strong. I bet you a lot of colleges and camps got them because they were virtually indestructible, largely because of the bridle joint corners. Now, one of the things about the bridle joint to note is that it works best, and you're really only going to see it when you have that kind of corner coming in, and both pieces of material making the corner are the same thickness or close to it, but typically they're the same thickness. So that's why you don't see this very often in a table leg or whatever, because it would, as I said earlier, weaken the leg, and you've got another piece coming in this way. So the mortise and tenon is better suited. But check this out. I incorporated the bridle joint in one of my Adirondack chair design. I wanted to do something that would be strong and be in line with the side arm. I didn't want to nail something on top. And it just begged for a bridle joint. Check it out. This is how I made it. Like, this is the back. Now my Adirondack, instead of being straight across, it pitches down like that so that it's even more comfortable. And look at that. It starts out, everything is square like this when you make the tenon and the mortise, and then it goes into the other arm this way. I haven't fitted this for a long time, so this is virtually a demo. All right, goes in perfectly. But then it gets sawn away, so those little holes get taken away. But then all the glue gets in there, and you have a tremendous joint. Then the shape is cut in. So that ends up being a superior joint for back there to hold that rail in behind. Now let me show you how it looks on an actual Adirondack chair of that design. Check it out. Here's the Adirondack chair. This is the style I love, this kind of sweeping back leg. This chair, not this actual one, but was on the cover of Fine Woodworking magazine, all by itself. It stole the show. And it was awesome. But it's stylish. I love how, rather than having that funky carved out thing for the seat and that big honking leg going back like that looks kind of awkward, and I wanted to have a nice fluid curve, an arch like that. So to do that, I had to route a slot in the side rail here. So the slats have a nice contour to them, but it's all kind of hidden inside this slot, this curved slot that's cut into the side rail. And then we maintain that nice arc going back. And then here's that sloping arm to the infamous bridle joint. See, after it's cut off, it looks pretty sweet, huh? I mean, that has integrity. It just feels honest. There's no nails, there's no pegs or anything. I could have even put pegs there like they did on this end up piece. But I didn't. There's just so much glue surface, it's not coming apart. So tonight I'm going to show you how to cut a simple bridle joint in a frame, basically a square frame that's of this thickness. What I did was, to prep for tonight, I've got 4 pieces of red oak. It could be anything. I just had a chunk of it that I resawed up, and then I just cut them to 15 inches long, and they're about 1 5/8 by 3/4. Doesn't really matter. So it's going to, when it's all done, it will make a square. Okay. Now I'm going to lay it out. I want my 2 sides are going to have the grain go all the way through. So when you look at the bridle joint here, the horses, right?
Bit, yeah.
Yeah. It goes on both sides of their mouth, and they chomp on the bit. And the other part, for us, it's the tenon. The bridle side is the long side. It's going to cover over. I want to position that. Say I'm building a frame. I want to position that frame so that it's long on the sides, almost like the typical style of a cabinet door. Usually the sides are longer, and then the cross pieces are tenoned in to the other piece, or they're joined in somehow, even screwed together. So I want to think about that when I'm laying it out. Now, one other way that this could be tremendously valuable to make is if you had to make some screens, you know, for your summer place. This is an awesome joint because you just cut your pieces all the same length, exactly the size of the opening, a little smaller, right? And you're going to cut the bridle joint, and you will have a tremendously beautiful frame on which to put your screen material or whatever. All right, so looking at this piece, I like these two the way they go up. I'm going to be even finicky about the grain. They're both going in like that. So I'm going to make these my sides, my upright stiles, and I'll put the triangle on there. That's my triangle to keep me oriented. Those are going to be the sides. The point is upwards. Now for the top and bottom, I'll just go like this. So I'll mark those as well, and we'll do another triangle right there. All right, so those are going to be oriented. So these are the ones I want to cut the slot in. Now, whenever making mortise and tenon, for the most part, almost every time, you're going to cut the mortise first and then fit the tenon. It's the same on a bridle joint. We're going to cut the slot first, and then we'll fit the tenon to it. So we'll make some test cuts before we fit it in there. So we're going to make this cut first. So I know that I have to do all 4 corners of the 2 upright pieces. I'll be cutting a nice slot in there like that. And then when it comes to the horizontal or rails, I'll be cutting some off here and here and here, here, and I'll be left with a tenon just like that on these cross pieces. Okay, so these are going to go in the other way. All right, so I think we got everything we need. Let's head over to the table saw and knock these out. All right, so here's the slot that we want to cut first. Now, I'm going to use a jig that many of you have seen before. It's actually my tenoning jig. And if you look at this and say, wow, I would love to know how to make one of those, well, it's your lucky day. Because you can make one of these if you just look at the video, right? But do we have that?
We will link the video. It's a free video in the description afterwards. How to make a tenon jig.
Yeah, I actually make this very tenoning jig live, right in front of you. No smoke and mirrors. It's all right there. And this is such a useful jig. It fits right over my fence. I can slide and I get control, and I use it primarily when I'm cutting tenons vertically like this. But in this case, we're going to cut both sides. We're going to cut the slot first, so we'll use this saw blade to cut the center slot, and then we'll move it so we'll cut on either side to get our tenon cut. So I'm going to cut the slots first and then make our tenons fit. Now, I want to get the blade height to equal the height of the material, because when this comes together, I want it to fit together so that tenon, so the width is fully buried. Now it's a little overhanging here, which is fine. You can just clean that off after, or sand it, or plane it quickly. It's just a little bit proud. The other side is almost perfectly flush. So you want to dial that in and get it pretty close. To do that, I'm just going to hold the workpiece right by it and drop the blade. And what I'm going to do is use a piece of wood on top. I can feel the blade kind of there. I'm going to drop it until I'm not hitting the blade anymore. I guess that worked. We're going to get this out of the way.
You sound confident in your trick there.
No, It was a new method I was experimenting with. I'm not so sure. Works great until you
Smoke and
can't.
mirrors right there.
Works great until you can't see what you're doing. So now that I've got the height set, I want to move the fence. And I'm going to make this in 2 cuts. This slot, this material, is 3/4 of an inch thick. The general rule is that the tenon is 1/3 the thickness of the overall piece. So you get pretty much an equal sandwich here. You know, your tenon, and then on either side is beefy. I noticed on the this end up one over there, the tenon is 1/2 inch. The stock is 1 5/8 inches, so it's pretty close. The tenon is slightly less, like mine might be slightly less as well. Now, we are going to move the blade over. I know that it has to be given my, I could mark it on here, like just eyeball it. Like I can see that's about 1/4. If I just bring this up, well, that's a little less than 1/4. I'll leave the full line. It would be right about there. Let me see if that equals. No, I'm going to go out a little more here. Okay. Where I preset it. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right. So I'm going to make a cut with this and then turn it around and make the cut the other way. Now, you may have a table saw blade and have experienced that when you run it through, the bottom of the cut or the curve is not flat, but it has a little V shape because every tooth is angled. It has a nice shearing cut on each side, and then you end up with a little peak in the middle on certain saw blades. Actually using a saw blade that has a flat tooth every third cut. So it may not be as common as that, but that's technically called a raker tooth. A raker is one that kind of pulls out and it's just coming in almost like a rake, but it's going to rake the bottom of the curve flat. It really doesn't cut a whole lot. I mean, it doesn't do much to the sides. You've got every other tooth is doing that, and then that raker is going to take that out. So that's going to be giving us a flat bottom. Now, if you're using a typical pointed saw blade, you want to make sure you end up with a flat cut. So what I would do if I was doing that, I would use, I'd set up a marking gauge like this, and I'm going to set it up on my test piece because this is the thing. Whenever you're making these frames, it's awesome to have some extra pieces. These are your test pieces, and you make your setups using extra parts, so of the same dimension. So I'm going to do this test over here, because if I slightly miss, it's not a big deal. Let's check this out. We're going to do on our sample piece, this is our test. We're going to make a scribble. This is where we'll be running. And what I do whenever I'm building frames, like let's say you were building a bunch of screens for your porch, and I would put all of my vertical stiles basically here first, because I know I need to trough or get a center slot in all of those. So I keep those here, staying away from my other pieces because I don't want to mess it up, right? And then once I'm all done those, I set them aside, and it's all about the others. So just to bring everything up and stay organized. Now, if you had kind of a funky bottom, like the pointed table saw blade, you could use a marking gauge like this and set it. I set it just to the width, and I'm going to make a little score cut in here, and then make your setup so that it reaches, your cutter reaches that. Okay, see? Nice little cut. And you could just take a narrow 1/4 inch, or even slightly less, I think, and just skim that after. It's super easy because it's very small, but it'll allow your tenon to seat flat at the bottom of that slot. All right, so let's go. I got it set up. Let's make a test cut here. See how I've got a little sliver of wood right in the middle there? That shows you how cleanly it's cutting, but it measures a 1/4 inch. So that kerf it's got to be right at 1/8 or slightly less to leave that sliver. I'm just going to go with that, and I'll peel that out after. But you can see it came right up to my knife line. Looks really good. So that's good. But I don't have to use the knife line because I've got that bottom raker tooth and I've got it the cut backed up so I won't get any blowout there. We're all set to go. So let's go ahead and run our pieces. It's that quick. Here we go. All right, so I'm taking a little 1/4 inch chisel and I'm going to just see if you end up with a little thing there. You can just take it and push it in. See, I'm just simple. I'm using the shoulder or the base of that kerf as a guide, and it's a nice clean bottom there. Get the other one. I did one earlier and I didn't. I must have had the saw set slightly different because it didn't create this. Now you could cut this groove with a dado blade as well, which those always have a flat bottom. They give you.
Somebody mentioned that here.
Yeah, but one of the nice things about this is that it's self-centering too when you use the table saw blade. So whatever you do, if you're using the same thickness material for the whole frame, make it in 2 cuts. Even if you use a 1/4 inch dado blade and you think you're centered, I mean, you could fuss around with it, but you're going to flip it around to make your tenon, so you know that tenon's going to be centered. So if you just do a flip around when you're cutting the through mortise here, then you'll be sure to nail it. Okay, that looks great. Those are all nice and clean. Now we're ready to cut our tenons. So to cut our tenons, we just need to drop the blade a little bit. I don't want these to go all the way because I'm going to make a cross cut to clean the shoulder. So just drop it a touch, and now we'll move it over, and I'm going to use the test piece again because this one we have to get the fit correct. So let's see. Let's see, is that enough? made a little mark on here that's approximately. So I want now the blade to be 1/4 inch from the fence to this side. I want to cut approximately 1/4 off each side. I could bring my piece up here like this and see the sidewall there and see how it matches with one of the teeth that are flaring this way. So there's one right there. That looks pretty good. And if I try to align it so it's right on there, I'll be pretty close. All right, let's try that and see if we have to adjust it all. Here we go. It's a little loose. Still loose. Looks good. So you saw the process. I just had my test piece and I kept trimming it and testing it. So it's nice that I had the bandsaw right nearby. I could just lop off roughly some of the cheeks there and test the tenon in there. And I got a nice fit. It was a little loose the first couple times, and then the last time it fit very nicely. You don't want it to jam in there. You don't want to have to force it because you don't want to be spreading out the bridle there. You want it to fit easily because you're going to put glue in there and everything kind of swells a bit. You want it to just fit nice and smoothly in there, not a force. Okay? So let's, now we have to trim the flaps off here. So we no longer need our handy dandy tenoning jig. And we're going to use a little simple crosscut miter gauge that comes with saws like this. All right, so all I want to do is set up the miter gauge. Just make sure it's square. I just used one of these drafting squares here. These are pretty true. Just check my miter gauge. That looks pretty sweet. I'm dead flat on the fence. So this is just going to help me. I'm going to hold the piece against the fence and make the cut. Now, I want to set this distance, the thickness of the blade. So let me move, the thickness of my material. So I'm going to move this over, and we're going to just align it. Find one of those teeth that flare in that direction. Let's see. It's hard to see, but it looks like this one here. And I'm just going to move my fence over. Hey, let's try this method. So I'm using that as a feeler to the outside, and I could just feel it hitting. So that's perfect right there. Now, before I make the cuts, I'm going to have to drop the saw blade. So let's drop that down. And I'm just looking to see where it's hitting there. I actually can use my test piece. I'm not sure which one was the final here. But anyway, I'll just come up. So that's coming very close. And I'll just look on my first cut. Okay. So before I do this, I'm going to trim off those flaps, because what happens is once you make this cross cut, I'm indexing directly off the fence for this. And that's fine. What's going to happen is, because these ends are dead square, and that's square, when I reference off the fence, I'll make my cross cut, then I'll flip and make another cross cut. So those shoulders of that joint are guaranteed to be in alignment, because they're referencing off the same true end. Now, I cut these to length on my crosscut sled with a stop, so they're all exactly the same length. And I know they're dead square because I set that saw up. If you hadn't seen that video, I do have a video up there that shows, it's a short one. It's one of the few we edited well, which I got to do better. It is, what's the 3-cut method? Yeah, it's called the 3-cut method to a dead square table sled, right? I forget.
Crosscut sled.
Crosscut sled, yeah. Okay. So I'm going to just lop those off, because once I make this cut, that piece will be free between the blade and the fence. It's not a huge danger or anything, but it could dance a little bit and then get jammed and pop out of there. It would be a very mild form of kickback. Famous last words as he tries to pull the sliver out of his.
Good practice is what you're saying.
Yeah. So good practice. I'm going to lop this off, and then it won't be wide enough to get trapped. So I'll just do that ahead. I could also make the cut in 2 passes, but I'd rather do it this way. Okay, draw ready? Here we go. One little note of technique there. When I was cutting that, I was focusing on that end staying dead flat against the fence the whole way. Sometimes you can start thinking about what you're going to do later or or that horrible round of golf you had, or whatever, and you might drift off. You might drift off. That happens. We do that.
Yeah.
On one shoulder, right? And not notice it. But if you notice you drift off, it's no problem. You just go back and do it again, because you can't overcut this. You can only undercut it. And if you drift off, you'll end up having one shoulder higher than the other, and it won't fit. All right, so we're all set. Let's head back to the bench and fit it up. When you're making those vertical cheek cuts, you have to be aware. You go slow because the roundness of the blade, you're taking a lot of material. The piece wants to rise up slightly when you're making that cut. So be careful when you do that. Oh, look at that, that's a beautiful fit. See how that fits in there? That's what you want. Nice, snug. The shoulders are beautiful all around. Sweet. All right, so let's get everything oriented. I'll do a quick test fit, and we'll glue this up. So we got, this is get all my triangles back. So that's my left and right, and my top, my bottom, like this. Let's go ahead and fit these in. Oops. And
Is this what you use for your seat? When you make your seats?
when I build, a lot of times when I build the seat frames for like Queen Anne chairs or whatnot, I'll use this method. Now, that one is a little snug for some reason. Maybe I came off. So all you have to do is you can just lightly rasp that face. It's not really worth a shoulder plane there. That feels better. That'll work. All right, so there we go. I'm going to put all this out like this. Now, I'm going to put a board up here so I don't get glue on my bench. These are kind of like glue rails, so it gets it up off the table whenever you're gluing things up. It's nice to have glue rails like this. Pug used to use them. He introduced me to the whole concept. Okay. There we go. Now we're going to get a stick and our glue brush. Make sure our bucket is ready and a clean rag. I got a little stick. This will help spread the glue inside the joint. And that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to put a little bead in here. A little one in here. I got to do this on both sides. And I'll smear it around in a second. Try to hold it horizontal so it doesn't start dripping out before I'm ready. So you just got to get the glue in there, but this is one of the advantages of this joint is that you have all that glue surface. So if you get a nice fit here, and you let that glue set up, it is rock solid. And this is, I'm using Type Bond 3, which is, as they say, their best glue, but it gives you a little longer open time, and it is waterproof, or almost as waterproof as you can get. Not like epoxy waterproof, but it is waterproof. And if you're going to use it outside, so that's what I used on the Adirondack. So getting the glue on these, you can see how these tenons are the same height. Now we're ready to smear it out. So I'm going to just smooth that glue all up in there on both sides with a stick, a thin stick. I think I have ample glue. But you definitely want to make sure you cover the surface in there. Get the other one. Take advantage of it. You got all that surface. It's going to create a dynamite bond here. Okay, and then on the surfaces. could brush this, but stick is working quite well. What do you think of this method?
Well, it does bring back the memories of the send-up furniture that our boys used. Remember? They're the bunk beds that we had.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I don't
We
know.
actually just last summer gave them away.
Maybe
We've had
those
them for a
were the
long
send-up,
time.
right? I can't remember. I guess they were. I know they came out after a lot of companies started using the technique because they went really big for a while there. All right, ready to assemble. Now I have some glue squeeze out here, so I want to do it in a way that I can clean it up easily. So get it oriented right. That's my bottom rail. I'm going to bring this in like this. And let's set this one. This was the one that was snug, but just nicely fit there. And let's get the other side. Beautiful. Oh, we got all that glue squeezing out. I'm going to get rid of some of that. Before I get too far here. Okay, now we can put on the other rail. I like to work down into the table, it just works better. So I'll get that end and that end. There we go. Beautiful. Man, it's such a satisfying fit. It's just, and how easy that was, right? There's no chopping shoulders back or anything of the typical mortise, but very quickly you have a substantial joint. And now I'm going to, before I put the clamps on, I'm going to wipe off some of the excess here. But look at that fit, huh? Isn't that nice?
Very nice.
And you see the way the end grain pops, as it will if you put clear finish on there, but you can paint these or whatever you want. They could be picture frames. You could just route a recess like a rabbit on the inside to sit your picture frame in there. I mean your photo or whatever.
That's really nice.
Pretty strong for picture frames, but you wouldn't have to fuss with the miters, and you could get a little bit more of a rustic effect here. You could even put pegs in there, like this end up. All right, so once I get all that, I'm going to just throw some clamps on, nice and easy. Just going to snug this, just lightly snug, so I can pull it in the other direction. These tend to be self-squaring because you've got all those square shoulders aligning. So just lightly snugging until I get the others in this direction. Okay, so that one seated it. Now this will seat it to the shoulder. Nice. Pull this shoulder right in. Those look awesome. They really... All right. Beautiful. Now, because it's an open joint, there's actually a little bit of give here. So, I mean, hardly any, but if you really want to get a good glue bond here, you want to add some pressure squeezing that sandwich kind of across that tenon. So, whatever you have, I'll just use some of these quick grips. And as I pull, you see how we get a tiny bit of squeeze out there? That's really pulling that joint in. Let me show you the other corner as I did that. See, now we have perfect squeeze out. That's a really nice fitting joint. And go ahead and get this one over here. Same thing. I'll reach over and get this one. And there we go. Beautiful. I'm getting perfect squeeze out all around. You could go ahead and hit some of that off so you don't have to clean off as much later. And that's how fast it is. So imagine if you were making a series of frames. The great thing is you cut all the parts exactly to the length of the opening. If you had an opening it was fitting into. Because they're through tenons, the tenon goes all the way through on both directions. So it's the dimension. And once you get that, you just orient it so you cut all your slots on one side and then all the tenons on the other. And it goes together like this. It's really a piece of cake. Now, I'm going to set this aside and take the one out of the oven that I did earlier today. And I've just pulled it out of the clamps before you got here. And check it out. It's a beautiful, strong frame. And I'm trying to get it so you can see the contrast. I always like how you see that contrast to the end grain with the tenon and how strong that is. And that measures like 11 3/4 on the inside. So if you had a 12-inch square picture or something, it would fit in there. But there's really no purpose for this except, you could amuse your friends like this. I don't know how, but...
David's asking, do you check for square?
David, yeah, good question. Like I said, these things tend to be self-squaring because of those shoulders. I mean, look at that. It's just dead on. So if you're square, and just think about it, I cut all my pieces exactly the same length, and as you pull it up, especially the wider the shoulders are, the more self-squaring it is. But I can measure across the corner, but I'm almost certain. 21 3/16 strong. Okay, when I say strong, I mean it's a 32nd over or 32nd shy of 21. Okay. Now, stay right there. I'm going to turn the other angle. 21 3/16 strong. See how dead on that is?
Wow.
I did say it, right? See, now you know I'm being honest. Anyway, you could peg this out if you did it like that chair. Normally you put a peg like in that position and then diagonally across. And you do that so that they're not aligned in the grain of either tenon. So you wouldn't want to put them in the middle and then there. Then they would be in line and you would actually create more opportunity for some kind of split or breakage. When you offset them like that, that's more the classic kind of pegging. Okay, so I would actually put them a little closer to the shoulder there, but that gives you the idea. You would just drill through and drive your peg and be good to go.
When you do peg the joints, do you make your own pegs?
Yeah, I do. I actually was going to do the peg, but it's getting a little late. I just take this is just square oak, and then I'll take the spoke shave and knock the corners off. So I end up with approximately round. That's not the best. And then I'll drill through just straight down and then a little glue and drive it right in. Then I trim it a little heavy and good to go. But that's all you do. Pretty simple. Or you can use other stock, but this is like the way the old ones were. They were not dead round. And if you use like a birch plug, dead round, and you were trying to make an old feel to the piece, then you wanted to kind of like just whittle out it's pretty fast to make your own.
We did though making your pegs in a more expanded way. I forget what.
It's been in courses like for the when we did the Craftsman dining chair, we have pegs on that, and we did peg that. That's the only one I can think of. So please, if you like this content, go ahead and subscribe. Look, I'm going to point like down there at that button. Is that the right way? That red button,
No,
subscribe.
it's not a red
Yeah.
button. It's a tap our logo in the left corner.
Oh, okay.
Bottom corner.
Right over
No,
there.
this,
No, this is left. Well, you're left.
I'm not sure how that shows up on the screen. Here.
Okay, well, maybe it's over there. All right, so wherever it is.
We are just so.
You can
technical.
subscribe. But
Yep,
then,
yep.
but if you really want to be an insider, go to the website. It's epicwoodworking.com, and you'll get to see all the stuff. We're revamping things, and we're getting some slick new systems for video as well. So you'll be seeing those things introduced in the next few months. But thank you so much once again for hanging out, coming by the shop. Always a pleasure, and we love having you here with us. And for the camera lady and myself, we'll see you next time, right back here on Shop Night Live. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Good night, everyone.
See you in Romper Room.
Thank you.